Thank you for listening to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formingforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for Forming for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. Welcome to Speaking with Confidence, the podcast dedicated to helping you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on your journey to becoming a powerful communicator. I want to thank each and every one of you for your support. It truly means the world to me. Please visit timnewmanspeaks.com to sign up for the Speaking with Confidence newsletter and other free resources. Today's guest, Dr. Craig Hane, also known as Dr. Dell, is a math educator and innovator dedicated to transforming how math is taught and learned. With a PhD in algebraic number theory and decades of teaching and business experience, Dr. Dell is on a mission to revolutionize math education and empower individuals with practical tools to unlock their potential. His mission is to break down math barriers and inspire listeners to invest in yourself for a brighter future. Dr. Dell offers a compelling mix of expertise, innovation, and storytelling that resonates with listeners of all backgrounds. Dr. Dell, welcome to the show. I mean, you've got a long history in both academia and business, but there's one area that I'm really fascinated with, and that's your relationship with NASCAR. Can you just give us a little bit of background on what that history is and how it started and who you were dealing with?
Yeah, sure, Tim. I'll be glad to. I'm an old guy, as you can tell. I got my PhD back in 1967. And the truth is, as I tell in the book I wrote, How and Why Public School Math is Destroying the USA, I almost flunked out of math when I was in high school. And then I was saved by, actually, total 3 teachers saved me. And I learned, in addition to my PhD in theoretical math, I had learned practical math. And today I teach students practical math in about 3 months that you need for practical math. Now, let me tell you what practical math did for me. Starting in the early 1970s, I'm from Indiana, and I lived in Terre Haute where Tony Hallman was, and he had the 500-mile speedway. And I knew Tony, and I knew other people. I won't mention their names now. And I sponsored A.J. Foyt in a racing in Terre Haute at the action track. And if it hadn't been for practical math, that wouldn't have happened, because then what happened was I built a drag strip, an 8-mile drag strip in Terre Haute called Action Dragway. And then I got to deal with drag racers, Big Daddy Don Garlitz, Grumpy Jenkins, Bob Glidden, all those. Then later, I developed a racing gasoline we sold for years called H&H Racing Gasoline. And then I developed something called the Dynabrain. Now, all of this was practical math, not theoretical math. And once I developed the Dynabrain to test racing engines on water brake dynamometers, my customers there became people down in NASCAR, mostly Charlotte, North Carolina. And one of my customers was Australian Racing, and they were one of my early customers. They had a Dynabrain, tested the racing engines on a water brake dynamometer, and it made it much more efficient than the old way. And Roland Wolotka, who was the general manager of Australian Racing, one day I'm out back talking to him, because I go to Charlotte all the time, and he said, I said, I hear you got rid of your racer, Dave Marcus. He said, yeah, we got a new racer. I said, well, who would that be? And he says, well, he says, he's that guy riding that motorcycle back here. He says, I'll introduce you to him. So he waved him up. Guy comes up on a little motorcycle, and he says, I want you to meet Craig Hane, who is the guy that developed the Dynabrain. And that's why we have the best racing engines in NASCAR today, because we can test them better on our water brake dynamometer. And he said, Craig, I want you to meet our new race driver. He said, a lot of people say he's a wild man and no one else would hire him, but we're going to take a chance with him. Craig, I want you to meet Dale Earnhardt. I met Dale Earnhardt. And that was before he ran his first NASCAR race. And then he went ahead that year and ran 5 races. But the next year he won Rookie of the Year. The year after that, he won Grand National Champion. And of course, when I would be down there, I would meet the race. I knew Virtually all the racers I knew at that point in time. This would have been in the late 70s. And I knew Richard Petty. I used to go up there and go to his place, and his brother ran their dynamometer, and knew Junior Johnson and Cale Yarborough and Darrell Waltrip. I knew all those guys, Buddy Baker. And all of this is because of practical math. Now, today, I have a program online. Back then, I loved teaching high school math. That was my favorite thing. I did it for years and years. I loved to teach it. It was very difficult to do in the old days. Now, today, thanks to the scientific calculator, TI-30XA, the first thing I do is I teach a student how to use this calculator, the things they need to know on it, which is just a small part of what they need. And then I teach them practical math. And I have a website today where they can go to, and they can learn all about this. I have 4 videos that are educational. And those educational videos will teach a student or a parent what they need to know to be successful with math. No schools are doing it today. You can't get it in any school I've heard of. There's no textbooks that do it, but it's online and it's easy to do. And so they go there, and those 4 educational videos will teach them how to dramatically improve their life for $9.
So you bring up something, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about here. Explain the difference between theoretical math and practical math.
Oh, there's a huge difference. Theoretical math, in both subjects, you study concepts and you understand what's a triangle, what's a circle, things of that nature. But then you've got to learn processes to apply those things to all sorts of different things, whatever it might be. I've applied it to building a drag strip, the Dynabrain, all sorts of things, any technical subject. Then I had a company called Hane Training, where we trained over 2.5 decades. We trained thousands of technicians in the military and in big companies, all practical math. Now, first of all, you learn arithmetic, and you learn there's all these manual techniques to do things. But if you take this calculator, which today costs about $16, you do all your arithmetic with a calculator, but you got to learn to do it. That's the first thing I teach a student, how to use a scientific calculator. I'm talking about post-elementary now, starting, say, the 8th grade, teenagers, how to use this calculator. They learn it in about 2 or 3 weeks. It's like playing a game. It's fun. A lot of students today in high school and middle school have struggled with math. They don't like it. They're afraid of it. In fact, I'd say 80% of them are afraid of it and don't like it. None of them are being taught properly. So I teach them to use this calculator. Then once I've done that, I teach them practical algebra, practical geometry, and practical trigonometry. That sounds terrible, but there's only 7 lessons. I teach them that, and they learn it in about 3 months. Now they're ready for the military. They're ready for a technical career. It also will help them in their high school math, which is still horrible. High school math today, and it varies from school to school and teacher to teacher. There's no uniformity to it. Believe me, if you say, well, I studied Algebra 1, what does that mean? Depends on which school you went to, what teacher you had. It could be all sorts of different things. And I flunked Algebra. Well, I didn't do well in Algebra 1 when I was in high school. And I was told by my principal, Craig, you'll never go to college. No one in my family had ever gone to college. Craig, you'll never go to college because you didn't do well in algebra. I lived in Greencastle, Indiana. We had a school there called DePaul University. My senior year, by the way, I did good in geometry. I had a good teacher for geometry. My senior year, she recommended I go to DePaul and take college algebra. My principal didn't want me to. He said I embarrassed the school, but I had a good teacher, Dr. Clint Gass, and I got an A in it. Whether you learn math or not depends, number one, what it is you're being taught, and number two, how it's being taught. Pardon me, when I talk, I get a little phlegm on my throat.
You're good.
So now I explain all that in a book called How and Why Public School Math is Destroying the USA. If you go to my website, craighane.com, CRAIGHANE.com, you get a free PDF copy of that book, and you'll learn about my story, things I've just now told you, and you'll also learn how today any student can learn math. There's only one grade that counts by way of math. That's A. You either know it or you don't know it. Anything other than an A, you didn't understand. There's something you didn't understand. And so when they take my program, It's pretty amazing. And I explain all that in the book, and then those 4 videos I told you about that they can go to. And I'll give you the URL for that.
But you bring up some really good points, and I think a lot of it comes down to what you're being taught and who's teaching it. And so how did your early experiences in math education in particular really kind of guide you to where you are today? Because like you said, you had somebody who was really bad, and then you had somebody who was really good and helped you. Um, how did that really kind of define who you are and get you to this point?
Well, as you know, I'm 86 years old. I was born in 1938. And during World War II, my parents both worked. My dad worked in a war plant. My mother worked in town. And I lived next door to my Uncle Jack Davis, who was a barber and a builder. And he was 60 years old. And he taught me to count with Cheerios. I went to a little public school in Putnamville, Indiana. And I was the youngest kid in my class. I was 5 years old when my dad enrolled me there. And I couldn't skip. I couldn't sing. I was the dumbest kid in the class on just about everything they did, except Miss Lewis, Bernice Lewis, my teacher, decided to teach all of my classmates us to count. None of them had been taught to count because the parents were all working. It was World War II. Believe me, it was a different world.
Different time, absolutely.
So she gets us up, sit us down, and she's going to teach us to count. And some of them had learned to count maybe to 10, but they didn't really understand counting. My Uncle Jack had taught me how to count, taught me the decimal system, 10, 11, 12, on up. So she gave it to me, and I counted, and I just started counting. And when I got up into my 50s or 60s, she says, Craig, how far can you count? I said, well, I don't know. When you get to 99, you go to 100, and then you 101. It amazed her that I was the only kid in the first grade that learned how to count because of my Uncle Jack Davis. Not because I was no smarter than my classmates. So then she said, Craig, the next day she said, Craig, would you come up and help me teach your classmates to count? So I had my first teaching experience when I was 5 years old. And it was wonderful. My self-esteem went up, my self-confidence, and all of a sudden, everybody thought I was the smartest kid in the class. Oh, he's a genius. No. I was lucky I had my Uncle Jack Davis as a teacher. Then, all through the 8th grade, he taught me practical math. I've got some Uncle Jack videos that I give people. And any parent can do this. He wasn't a math teacher, he was a barber and a builder. Well, then, in the 9th grade in Greencastle, Indiana, we moved into town. As a freshman in high school, I took Algebra 1. And I didn't understand it, I didn't like it, and I didn't get a very good grade. And my principal said, Craig, you're never going to go to college. You're not college material. You're going to be a working man, just like your family. No one in my family had ever gone to college. My dad had an 8th grade education, which was common back then. Okay. Well, my sophomore year, I had geometry, and Miss O'Hare taught us how to prove theorems, which I like doing that. It's just reasoning. Right. By the way, that's not how I teach geometry today, but that's how she taught me. My junior year, I had algebra again with the same algebra teacher and didn't do well again, but now I was a troublemaker. I kept asking questions. How do you do this? How does this work? Where did this quadratic formula come from? Where did it come from? He just said, shut up and learn it and apply it. He didn't know where it came from. Well, then my senior year, as I told you earlier, I went to DePaul and took college algebra with Dr. Clint Gass. So my Jack Davis, then Miss Madonna O'Hare was my geometry teacher. Then at DePaul was Dr. Clint Gass, and he taught me. I took college algebra. He was a good teacher, and I got an A. He then got me into the #1 liberal arts college in the United States, Oberlin College. It's no longer #1, but back then it was. And it had a better math department than DePaul did because it was a more advanced college. I majored in math and English. And then after I graduated in 1960, I taught high school for a year at Western Reserve High School in Wakeman, Ohio. I taught all 4 grades. And then I realized, up until then, I've been tutoring students, and I never had a failure as a tutor. But as a teacher, and I taught all 4 grades of math and chemistry, so some of the kids couldn't keep up, and I couldn't do anything about it. And so I wanted to know if there was any way I could revise high school math, but there was no way to do it at that time, no technology to let me do it. And so then I went back home that summer, and Dr. Gass asked me, he was my mentor now, and I always meet with him. He said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, I'm going on sabbatical, second semester next year. Would you teach at DePaul? I said, oh, what do you want me to teach? He said, the advanced theory. Now, I know a lot of advanced theory, too. I don't teach it to my students. I only would teach that to students that really want to become a theoretical mathematician. And so anyway, he then said, well, why don't you go to graduate school? I never thought of it. Went down to Bloomington, Indiana, 40 miles away to Indiana University, and I enrolled as a grad student, and I loved it. It was easy for me. I loved it. And I hate math tests. There's no such thing as a good math test, in my opinion. So I didn't take the math test to get a master's degree. But to get a PhD, all I could do is write a thesis. And I did that. And in 1966, they gave me a PhD and made me go to work. And then I went to a teacher's college in Indiana called Indiana State University, where they taught math teachers. And they hired me to teach theoretical math to their math majors. And I stuck my nose into what they're teaching the high school teachers, and I tried to get them to improve it. And they got so mad at me, they fired me. So then I went and taught that was 3 years there. I taught at engineering school then for 4 years. And then I went into business, and I started doing the business I'm telling you about.
Right.
Starting with A.J. Foyt, and then Don Garlitz, and then Dale Earnhardt, and all that. And all that required was practical math, not theoretical math.
So, generally when we talk about math, my eyes start to glaze over, and you lose me. But you have a knack, and just in our conversation, you've got a real knack of making it easy to understand. How did the problem with teaching math start, and how can we communicate it so that it's clear and easy to understand, so that young people today can get into math and learn it and not feel so much anxiety about it?
Well, I explain that in my book, How and Why Public School Math is Destroying the USA. You'll learn all about it there. What's wrong with public school math, and by the way, it's not the math teacher's fault. It's really the math educators. There is no such thing today as a good high school math textbook. Because what will happen is they'll take the things that you would find of value to use, and they'll mix them in with all kinds of stuff you'll never use. And it's difficult stuff. And most kids get discouraged. They can't keep up in class, and they just give up. And then they grade on a curve. I talk about the horrible curve. And anybody that doesn't get an A in a math course didn't learn the subject. You got a B or a C or a D or an F, you didn't learn it. I don't care if you got a B. There's things you didn't learn you should have learned. There's only one grade in math. You either learn it or you don't learn it. But the point is, what I do in my program, my online program, which is all automated online, self-paced, they study it at home. I use tutorial videos that me tutoring them, comes off Amazon Web Services. I use notes and exercises. There'll be a book they'll have. They can print out a PDF of it, or they can buy it on Amazon, a little cheap book. And then they go at their own pace, and they learn it, and then they go. It's like climbing a ladder, one step at a time. And you don't try to go from step 3 to step 8. You got to do all the steps at a time to get up there. And in high school math, they can't do this in high school. I couldn't do it when I was if a high school hired me today to be a math teacher. What I would do today, and I'm trying to get some schools to do this. I got 2 private schools to do it already. What I'm trying to do is, if I was hired today to be a math teacher at a high school, I would put all the students into my online program, and then I would be a coach. Because you cannot do it. They all learn at different paces.
Different paces, right.
Depends on their background and their ability and how hard they work. And sometimes they got to, they get sick for a week or go on a vacation, whatever. And so with my program, it doesn't matter. It's all self-paced. I have students that go through my entire practical math program, and assuming they didn't already know it, if they already knew a lot of it, they go through it in a week. But let's say they didn't know it. They go through it in about a month. Most students take about 3 months. But if it takes them 6 months, it's okay. It doesn't matter. But you're going to learn practical math, and I teach that when you go to the web page that If you go to my personal website, I have a button on it that says how to improve your life. You go there and it'll show you.
Right.
And I have 4 educational videos that fully explain this. The first thing, by the way, I do with post-elementary, and I do this as I teach them how to use what they need to know about this scientific calculator. Now, this scientific calculator used to cost $10. It's up to about $16 today at Amazon. It has about 50 things it'll do. There's less than 20 of them you need to learn. So I don't teach the stuff you don't need. There's all kinds of stuff on this calculator that you'll never use. I teach the stuff you'll use. And it's easy. And it's kinesthetic, and they learn by doing. You don't learn by just listening to someone talk about it. You got to do it.
You got to do it.
Right. Once you've learned this calculator, I then teach you practical algebra. How many lessons does it take to learn all the practical algebra that I ever needed to do all the things I told you I did and all the things you'll need? How many lessons do you think practical algebra is?
Probably 10.
10.
Hey.
Then I teach practical geometry, and we apply algebra to geometry. How long is something? What is the area? What is the volume? Now, 19 lessons, because we got triangles and circles and three-dimensional stuff, but it's all practical. And what makes it easy to do is we use the calculator to do all arithmetic calculations. You'll never, ever again do it manually. And that makes it so much easier. Now, before the calculators came out, you couldn't do that. In fact, when I taught in engineering school, to do the math, you had to do it manually, or they use what they call logarithm tables, and they put them on a slide rule called a slipstick. In 1972, when the first scientific calculator came out, the HP 35, those became obsolete. By the way, do you know how much that first calculator cost, the HP 35, in 1972?
Is it probably $300?
In today's dollars, $2,500.
Oh my goodness.
In today's dollars. At that time, it was $395.
Yeah.
Now, Hewlett-Packard thought they'd sell 10,000 of them to engineers. Students started buying them. I was teaching at an engineering school at that time, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in Indiana. I'll never forget, this calculator came out, and some of the students there had money. They could afford $395 if professors weren't going to spend it. And I asked one of the students one day, I said, show me this calculator. And he showed it to me. Now, I was teaching the advanced theory, but I could see what it did. So I saw immediately slide rules are obsolete. What would take you 10 minutes on a slide rule, you do in 1 minute with a calculator. Okay, I go to my math department meeting, and I said, hey guys, guess what? Slide rules are obsolete. Log tables and trig tables are obsolete. Oh, that's what they taught. Blew their minds. Well, that's what happened. And they quit making a slide rule about 1980. And I don't know if you can buy one today or not. I suppose you buy an old one. But then Hewlett-Packard, instead of selling 10,000 of them that year to engineers, they sold 100,000. So about a year later, they lowered the price to $195. Then Texas Instruments came along and they said, the Hewlett-Packard calculator is kind of hard to use. So they came up with one that was easier to use, and they sold it for under $100. And then years later, they came up with the TI-30XA, and up until we had recent inflation, it was $10. And this calculator is extremely useful and easy to use if it's taught properly, which is what I do. If you'd have had one of these during the Manhattan Project, this would have been worth $1 million. Because they had to do all the arithmetic manually. They hired a bunch of women to do it, by the way. And this calculator does it. And this would have been worth $1 million. People don't realize, it's $10, but it's kind of like a smartphone.
Yes.
Look at all you can do with a smartphone today.
Right.
You can do stuff with a smartphone that you used to couldn't do. And then, when's the last time you bought a camera?
Yeah, if you're not into photography and videography, your camera is your phone.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, that's what it is. And so if you go to my personal website, craighane.com, you'll learn all about this. I've got a lot of free videos there just of interest. One of my reasons, one is math proves God exists.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you mean by math is God's language?
Well, math, the math the Chinese use is exactly the same math that we use.
Yes.
When I was let me give you an example. When I was a graduate student, I had to pass French and German back in those days. This was in the 60s. I can't read a French newspaper or a German newspaper or a French book I learned a little bit of French, a little bit of German, but I couldn't read a book but they would give me, to test me, they would give me a paper in mathematics written in French. Well, because of the math, I could do it. Math is universal. Whether you're Chinese or Russian or whatever you are, math is math. Same thing, the number system and geometry. Now they have different maybe names for it, but if I see a triangle and then I see a word that describes it in whatever language, I know it's a triangle.
Right.
So that's how I passed if they'd have given me a German test or a French test without a math paper, I couldn't have passed it. I'd have flunked
it. That's a really good point. And
now, how does math prove God exists? It's not just math; it's math and science combined. But I explained to it had nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with the Bible. It's math and science. It depends on how you define God, and I explain all that, how I define it. But there's a scientist that you may never heard of named William Tiller. You ever hear of William Tiller?
No.
Okay. I will tell everybody now, if you really want to understand what I consider to be the latest, most important science, go study Dr. William Tiller's work. He wrote 3 books and he's got a website. He's dead now. He died recently. He's older than he was in his 90s when he died. Fantastic guy. But he explains it, and I won't get into it now. We haven't got time on this particular part. If you want to have another podcast sometime, I will give you more details on that.
Oh, I think we definitely will, because we got more to talk about than what we can fit into here. That's for sure. You know, there's another interesting concept that you talk about a lot, and it's the idea of what you believe is what will happen. How did that change your life? That whole idea.
When I was 10 years old, my parents were not religious. They weren't atheists. They just didn't. They worked so hard, they never went to church. And we didn't. But my grandparents did, and they took me to the Nazarene Church in Greencastle, Indiana, and I had a Sunday school teacher named Theron York. And he taught me things out of the New Testament, the Golden Rule and things like that. But he also taught me that what you believe will come to pass. Like if you had enough belief, you can move a mountain. Remember that? It's in the Bible.
Yep.
And I believed him. And so all my life, now it's not what you desire, by the way, it's what you believe. There's a big difference between what you want and what you believe. All my life, I learned how to believe things. And I teach that in other places about it. And what I believed then came to pass. And it's happened many, many, many times. I believed I would go to college. And when I was told in the 9th grade, when I didn't do well in algebra, that you're not going to go to college, it really depressed me because I thought, well, how can that be? I believe I'm going. Well, then Miss O'Hare, my sophomore year in geometry, saved me. Had it been for her, but it happened. And I could go through story after story after story where I believed something and then it happened.
Right.
And I don't know. And it's part of understanding God and the non-physical world. God exists in what's called the non-physical world, by the way, which it exists. It's all your body is both physical and non-physical. And when your physical body dies, your non-physical body exists in another. It's really not a time space. It's a frequency domain. That Tiller explains all that, by the way. That's science.
Right.
That's not nothing to do with the Bible or the Quran or any literature. Now they understood it, but Tiller explained it from a scientist. He's actually done experiments to prove it. I call him the modern Galileo.
But that's, again, all very interesting things. And like I said, we could spend hours, or I could spend hours talking about a lot of these things, but really do appreciate you taking some time with us today. Where can people find you? CraigHane.com.
CRAIGHANE.com. Just go there, and I have a tab that tells you how to improve your life, and that'll take you to what I told you about, the 4 videos that are educational. And basically what they'll do is they will tell you how to dramatically improve your life for $9.
And like I said, I'll put that in the show notes, and for everybody to go, and they can also download your book there, and lots of other things. Dr. Dell, thank you so much for taking some time with us. I really do appreciate it.
Tim, you're more than welcome, and God bless you, and God bless your listeners and everybody listening to this, okay?
Thank you so much. Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get free resources and join our growing community, and register for the Forming for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode of Speaking with Confidence. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formingforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Forming for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. We'll see you next time. Take care.